everyone, and welcome to episode 10 of 2cc's of Fiber Arts. I am your co-host, Kelly, and I'm here, of course, with other co-host, Andrew. And today in our episode, we are going to be talking all about colorways. Oh my gosh. So we are very excited about talking about this because, as I'm sure any fiber artist that we know, colors, colorways, color work, anything to do with color in fiber arts is such a big topic. It's a personal topic. It is very few people are in the gray when it comes to their love for certain colors and then their hatred for certain colors. So I'm pretty sure we are going to be getting both sides of that in the conversation today. So with Andrew, one of the things that I'm very curious about is just like kind of the types of colorways that he's really drawn to, like, you know, maybe some similarities we might have, but even maybe some like differences in like why he likes certain colors. Yeah. And I think like, you know, we can just kind of kick it off from there. So Andrew, like if you were to kind of pick like your general color aesthetic, what would you kind of like say? How would you describe it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think my color aesthetic has kind of changed. And that's been basically because when shopping for yarn, I am really drawn to like big, bright colors. Like I love yellow and orange and like those really bright, eye-catching colors. But then when it comes to making, I only have big, bright colors. And so then I have big, bright items. And then, it's like, what am I going to wear this with? And I ran into that a lot of times where my final piece ended up being like big and bold, but I was, hoping to wear something more subdued. So I'm trying to
Mhm.
edit myself a little bit in my like color selection where I can have maybe like one
Okay.
color that is like big and bold, and then the rest are like more neutral. And so I'm like in
Okay.
an era right now where I'm discovering the magic of neutrals. Because for a while I was like, man, neutrals are
Ooh.
so boring. Like they're literally called neutral. Like that's like zero, nothing, you know? But now I can see like the benefit, like neutrals can really help bring out another color. And it kind of makes it more usable as like a finished item.
Okay. Yeah, okay, that makes a lot of sense. Cause like I get kind of like that eye catchiness, but then yeah, you
Mm.
think like, but what will this look good with kind of thing? I
Yeah,
love that you're like, you
exactly.
know, neutrals, blah, boring and everything like that.
Yeah.
Which is funny because all my life, like neutrals have always been like my favorite colors. um,
A favorite? Like not even just
and
for fiber arts?
no, not even just for fiber arts. Like I've always really been drawn to like neutral shades of things. And
Mm.
I mean, if we did like a deep dive into like why I might have liked that, I'm sure we could figure that out. But just overall, I was just always drawn to, you know, like just gray,
Right.
charcoal, which is just gray but dark.
Yeah, yeah, right.
And like, you know, whites and off whites and creams and browns and like
Okay.
things like that. Like just neutral colors, just always for some reason were some of my favorite ones. It may be that it's like because they were safe colors. Like they weren't bold,
Okay.
they weren't out loud, they weren't attention grabbing. Um, and I think that's like even now, like I think one thing, if I think about it, I'm still really drawn to neutrals because they're not so attention grabbing. And
Mhm.
it's because I don't need help enhancing my attention grabbing personality. So like
Yeah,
I'm
that's
already
true.
a very loud, bold person. So
Yeah,
imagine if I also wore loud, bold colors. It's like I'm
yeah.
like, everybody look at me. Yeah.
Well, I
So I
mean,
think maybe like my draw to yeah.
there are definitely people who do that. They wear, like, big, bold things. They have big, bold personality, like, you could do that. But it's interesting you bring it up as, like, your color choices kind of are in a way to kind of, like, balance out your personality.
Yeah. And I don't think that I knew that for a long time. Like I think I was just like I just
Uh-huh.
happen to like these colors. Like my favorite colors growing up were blue, green, and gray. Like if I were to be like have to pick them, blue would be like the number one, gray would be number two, green. Well, actually, gray and green kind of switch back and forth between being number two. I oftentimes would say
Mhm.
like blue was my favorite. Green
Uh-huh.
was a comforting color, like it's very relaxing. And then gray was like a power color for me because gray
Mm.
to me like represented storms, metal, steel,
Okay.
like
Oh, yeah.
powerful men in gray suits. Like it's like, slate. Like
Uh-huh.
everything that was strong was gray. Um,
Yeah.
so I was like, that's my power color. And then blue was like my just like go to like magic color. Like it was like my favorite. I just enjoy blue.
Yeah.
Um, and then green was just like, it's very organic and natural. And to me, I was like, green was basically just blue with a different shade thrown into it. It was just cool and
Yeah.
calming. Um,
I mean, that is what green
yeah.
is, right? That's literally what green
Yes.
is.
Yeah, that's not even I feel like it. It's like, no, that is legit the definition of green. Yes.
Right, right. Yeah, that's interesting. You know, when I was growing up, my favorite color was blue. And then in high school, weirdly, it did change to like gray and black. And I was living in my parents' house, and my bedroom, we had two bedrooms that had bathrooms attached. So, of course, my parents took one, like the big one. But then I got the other one, and so they were asking me how I wanted to decorate the bathroom, and I was like, "I want like black and gray," and they were like, "Black and gray, like in the bathroom? Like that sounds so depressing, and why would you want that?" And I was like, "I don't know, those are my favorite colors." And to this day, that bathroom is still gray with all the original
Wow.
black and gray
Okay.
accents and everything. Yeah.
That is so funny.
So
And you know what I also
it sounds
find
like we
funny
had
is I'm just
similar.
noticing.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, okay, so you and I are both literally wearing black and gray right now.
I know. That's not even planned.
And
I
you
did
have on
not
a
plan for
blue
that.
hat. Yeah, it was not
I
no,
know.
we literally are just wearing those. Yes.
And we're
And
like,
yeah,
"Oh,
but
these
okay,
used
so
to be
you're
our
right, like
favorite colors," as if we're not still wearing them.
yes, exactly, exactly. Well, and I think like that's the thing though, is that like I know that for me, I'm drawn to different colors for different reasons, as I'm
Mhm.
sure all of us are. So like what I said about like, gray being more of like a power color to me, I wouldn't necessarily say gray is my favorite color because like to say
Mm,
it's my
mhm.
favorite is like that's not true. But it's definitely like one of those colors that when I see it, it draws something out of me. And also I love what you can do with gray. Like
Mm.
you can like pair it with so many different things. And
Yeah.
there are shades of gray. And I don't mean like, like 50 shades. I'm
Oh
not
my
saying like no
god.
copyright infringement. I mean like legitimately, I'm just like gray
Yeah, I mean,
is
true.
like not all
There's at
grays
least
are the
50.
same. It's like so there's more than 50 if you look at hex codes. There's all kinds of gray shades. But there's
Yeah,
different like there's
yeah,
bluish
yeah.
gray, there's like yellowish gray, there's like true gray, there's more of a pinky gray. Like you've got grays that can have different like shades and depending on what you pair it with, it can bring out and enhance certain aspects of it. So like you can have like
That's
a
true.
warm gray. Um
Mm,
so yeah, that's what I would kind of like say about that. There's
yeah,
also like to me, like I said that I would pick it out for like to balance my personality. But for
yeah,
you, I know you're really drawn to those like really big, bold colors.
yeah,
But I wouldn't necessarily say you're a very big, bold person. Like you don't seem to be like really like everyone pay attention to me kind of person. Like, you don't
yeah.
like you're not like me where you're just like everyone. I'm wanting to talk to everybody
Yeah.
here. Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, like, I feel like I keep to myself, like, most of the time, and then, like, I can come out of my shell and, like, you know, go back and forth, and I mean, like, you and I, like, have great conversations back and forth. So, like, I can definitely, like, enter that, like, personality. But yeah, for the most part, I'm not, like, so extroverted or anything. But yeah, the colors I'm drawn to is just, like, I don't know, something about like, I've noticed the past, like, year or 2 years, I am just, like, completely obsessed with yellow. I don't know why, but I think it's just, like, yellow invokes such a bright, like, positivity, like, I don't know, it just makes me feel good when I see yellow. on like especially yellow yarn, I'm just like, big heart eyes like popping out of my head like a cartoon. It's like my favorite thing ever.
Aw.
And I can't shake it. So I just am like leaning into the yellow stuff. But like that being said, when it comes to wearing something, I don't think I want to wear something that's like all yellow, like all yellow, like a whole yellow sweater. I don't know. That's a bit much. So I like to kind of like in the sweater that I'm making now, there's like a big yellow portion of it, but the rest of it is all neutral. And so it's like really nice actually to pair my favorite color with these other colors that are like, you know, it's more like building a background. And then you have the cherry on top, which is like the color
Mhm.
that will stand out. But if you have cherries all over the place, then you just have a bowl of cherries and it's not like a perfect sundae like you would if you like kind of stack the neutrals and then add the color at the end. You know what I mean?
I love that you compared it to, like, making a sundae, like, ice cream, and
Yeah,
yet when you said,
yeah.
like, a stack of cherries, and I'm like, I love having things like the extra hot fudge and the extra cherries. I'm like, pile it on there, which
Yeah, but if
I
you
actually
just
think is a
have
pretty
cherries
appropriate
and there's
analogy
nothing
because
else, like if you
you're
just
okay,
have
that's true. That's
cherries,
true.
like you can't have a million
You're
cherries
right,
on
that
top. It defeats the purpose of a cherry on top.
you're right, you're right, you're right, you're right. It does mean that, like, it loses the specialness. Like, it no longer has it's not center stage. If everybody is a
Yeah.
cherry, then
Yeah.
nothing is special on that Sunday.
Yeah,
Something like
exactly.
that.
Yeah.
It's something there.
Yeah,
Yes,
there's
okay, I
some
get you.
analogy in
Well,
there
because okay,
somewhere.
so yes. Okay, so one thing that I will say with all of that too is that yes, I will say I do like gray and it's really, really a great color. But sometimes I'm like, I need something else. Like, I need it to not just all be gray. There needs to be some other color in here. So pairing a gray with some other accent color that's like a little bit more bold feels
Yes.
like, okay, this gets a little bit more attention, but it's still not like out there. So even if I paired gray
Mhm.
with
Yeah.
something like a really bright, obnoxious purple or a red or
Mm.
something like that, it would
Yeah.
be still like in my wheelhouse. Like it would be like I would
Yeah.
still enjoy that. But I think that's the thing is I'm like, I'm not really good at picking colors like that. I'm not really good at matching or coordinating colors too well. So
Mm.
sometimes I think that's why I fall back on a lot of those neutrals is I'm like, well, I know a neutral is going to be safe. And if I just put a little bit of the other colors in there, it won't look too bad.
Mhm.
Um,
That's true.
yeah.
I
So
mean,
it's
picking
really hard.
colors.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, picking colors is a true skill, I think it just takes, like, practice, and it really helps when you go to, like, one of those conventions, like a Fiber Fest or something, because you can, like, start with one color and then go from booth to booth and kind of like look around and like hold the yarn up. And I mean, you could even do it at a yarn shop and just like hold up different skeins next to each other and be like, okay, do they look good next to each other? If yes, then move on to the next and then try and find a third or fourth, like depending on how many colors you need. And I found that that has been like
Okay.
a very helpful method of like coming up with like a color story. So maybe you could try that too.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's a great idea. But I mean, I can sit there and hold colors next to each other and have no clue how they're going to look in a finished product. Like,
Well,
because
okay,
I
yeah, true.
don't, like, yes, I am not super great with being able to coordinate colors like that, which is why I have to rely either on other people's eyes or color theory. So, like, I will turn to like the
Mhm.
science of color to be like, what are things that
True.
go well together? And then I might be like, okay, so there we go. Those are the colors that I would need to pick. Which then in turn means a lot of times I'm like, well, that's a little, I don't know, are those really gonna go well together? I still don't even
Uh.
trust color theory. I'm like, they'll tell me 2 colors are supposed to look good together, and then I'll be like, "Do they? I can't really tell if they do." So then I'm like, "You know what? I'm
Yeah,
just gonna pick 1 color, and that's all I'm gonna use." Like
yeah. I noticed that you use a lot of solids. But since this is an episode about colorways, what do you think about like
yeah.
variegated yarn or like speckled yarn? Do you ever use that kind of stuff?
Okay, actually, that's a great question because Variegated yarns, I'm a little iffy on. Like speckled yarns are
Mm.
fine because to me they're still basically solid. They just have like a little bit of
Yeah.
sprinkle, like pizzazz a little to them.
Yeah.
But with variegated
Yeah.
yarns, I'm just never quite I know. I'm just never quite sure how the colors are going to necessarily pool or what kind
Yeah.
of pattern they might come out with. So sometimes if the variegation is just like really stark. Like there are ones where there might
Mhm.
be like it's orange and red and blue and green and it's like all these bright colors all mixed into it. I'm
Yeah.
like, no, I don't really like those. But if it's kind of like more monochromatic or it's like
Mm.
mostly monochromatic with like maybe one splash of something bright, um, then I might be like more willing to go with that. But that's actually one way I've been able to get around doing color work is because if I don't want something that's a solid color, but I don't want to do like actual color work where I'm changing colors, changing yarns, or anything like that, I will opt for a variegated or a speckled or something like that to
Mm.
get
Yeah.
some splashes of color and then let that
Yeah.
play the foreground. So then that way I'm not
Yeah.
having to control the color, but it's still one smooth piece of yarn and then it just like plays
Okay,
out on
nice.
its own. So yeah. And a lot of times if I'm doing solids, I'll even like really enjoy a good tonal because to me a
Oh,
tonal
yes.
is still like oh, I love a tonal. Like
I
I
love tonal
freaking love a
yarns.
tonal yarn.
Yeah.
Yes, because then I get to be like I get the best of like, a solid, but it's not just a solid. Like it's got some character to it. It's like I
Yes.
get to have my gray with a little bit of charcoal.
Yeah. I actually have a great example of tonal yarn right now with my current project. I'll show it off for you, any of you who
Ooh,
are
yeah.
watching. Um, this is
Yeah,
what we
show it
mean
off.
by tonal yarn. So, hopefully you can kind of see. But you see how that brown, like, it's all one color, but it's got like some lighter tones, some darker tones, but it's all still like the same color in this brown section. And I mean, that's what I love about
Yeah.
tonal yarn as well, because you're right, it adds variety. Like if that brown was all just the same tone of brown all the way through, it'd be like way more boring to knit. The tonal yarn, you never know what color the next stitch is gonna be because it'll be the same color but like a different tone. So it kind of adds like a fun
Yeah,
element to the
absolutely.
to the making process. So yeah, I totally agree.
That's true. And I think like what I like about things like tonal yarn, like what you said, tonal yarn, like you said, is like it's not quote unquote boring. But I
Yeah.
think there's also something to be said about like if you do want something that is a controlled solid color, then tonals are like a nightmare to work with because you're just like, well,
Yeah,
now it's
it's
just like
true.
all over the place. But I think that's like tonals give a very good like vintage handmade look, whereas like
Yes,
a solid
yes.
color gives it a very polished look, like a very clean, like so
Mhm.
I've got, oh my God, it's gray. Duh.
Of
I've got a
course.
gray yarn right here. Yes. But it's because I'm making like these gloves still. But like I'm
Yeah.
making these gloves. And for me, I'm like, I needed the gloves to be just like classic glove,
Mhm.
gray, neutral can go with a coat, go with any color I might wear. So I'm like, I needed it to be pure solid gray. Um, as
Yeah.
opposed to something like I'm making a hat using this variegated yarn. Okay,
Ooh.
I'd say it's kind of actually I would say on the border of a variegated and a tonal.
I was thinking
Technically
that, yeah.
variegated because they're not the same color because of this little kind of almost splash of pink, but it's mostly like
Mm.
just tones of purpley indigo blue with those
Yeah.
little splashes of pink.
Mm.
So it's kind of like this is a way of getting some a little bit of excitement. Like there's no
Yeah,
texture really
exactly.
to this. It's just a solid stitch. So the color adds that like fun element to it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's really interesting you say that because you're right. The When you have like one solid stitch pattern, the color is like the star, and so like you can really pick like a
Mhm.
yarn like that variegated yarn. Like in knitting, an example would be like a stockinette. Like if I'm doing something in stockinette stitch, like let's say a sweater, for example, and I'm using a variegated yarn, well, it's gonna shine in the sweater because the stitches are all the same, and the yarn will really shine.
Yeah.
But as a great example of the the yarn can also take away from the stitch pattern. And I'm going to use the hat I'm wearing as an example. So I have the remainder of the yarn
Ooh, I love
here.
this.
Yeah. So you can see it's got like these like long stretches of blue and like kind of tonal navy. And then it has this like empty patch of like yellow. And so when you're knitting it, the color will pool in different areas. Um, and I was really excited to use it for this hat because I love this pattern. It's a really easy make, and the yarn feels amazing. But anyway, this is a cabled hat, which you might not be able to tell by looking at it, but this hat is like a very
Mm.
complicated cabling hat. But you cannot see the stitch definition because of the intense variegation. But if I come a little bit closer, can you see the cables? Like it's like still
I
really hard to tell,
yes, I
huh?
at least do see texture. Yeah,
Right.
like,
But
and that's
here
the
you
thing,
can
and I
see
think
there's a cable, like
yeah.
all these it just gets too muddy. So I kind of learned the hard way after making this hat, like, okay, variegated yarn and cables. They don't go together.
Yeah, that's what makes sense. And I think that that's another thing is that sometimes when we're picking colors as fiber artists, we might be drawn to certain ones and be like, "Ooh, that's really pretty in the skein," or something like that. And it
Yeah.
would look good in certain projects because of the type of texture or the stitch, but then in other projects it won't look as good. Be precisely for that same reason. You're like, what is going to play the star? Like, who's the star
Yeah.
in this pattern? Um,
Mhm.
so that's a great example where like the cables were supposed to be the star. And then the
Yes,
yarn ended up taking over. So then
it
you're like,
did.
well, this might as well have just been a plain beanie for the
I
yarn that I
know.
used. I should have used something a little bit more solid or a tonal. Or even still,
Yes.
if you wanted to use a variegated yarn, a more subtle variegation. So like the contrasts in the colors shouldn't be as much. So something like if it wasn't the navy and the yellow, if it had been like
Mhm.
navies and greens, it still would have been like not as like your cable still probably wouldn't be as prominent, but it wouldn't
Yeah.
have been as hidden either. So I think
Right,
those
right.
types of choices matter. But then
Yes.
also the variegation with a cable pattern, I think would work if you either chose to make all the cables variegated and then the background stitches solid or vice versa.
Mm.
And I think like
Well,
that would create I'm interested to see what kind of effect that would be if, like, you did a variegated background with solid cables versus solid background and variegated cables. Be curious
well,
about
I
that.
think, if you were gonna do something like that, you would have to do stranded color work, where, like,
Mhm.
you remember that hat that I made for Brian, my husband? With the
Yes.
interlocking,
Yes.
like it was, like, the brown and gray one that, like, they I don't know,
Yeah.
it's hard to explain, but, like, the different colors cross over each
I
other.
remember it, though.
So you could probably make something like that where like one of them is variegated and then the cabling one is not or something. Or you would have to like just do it in like a plain white yarn and then like paint dye the background and like leave the cables white or something. Have you ever heard of that where you like you color the yarn after you make it?
No. I mean, I've heard of people, like, they'll make something and then dye the project, like, the whole project, but I've never heard of, like,
Yeah.
somebody doing, like, paint like, hand painting the dye. But
Yes, you
well, I've
can.
heard of, like, that technique when people have, like, hand painted yarn, but
Yeah,
not the
yeah.
project after that is really interesting because then you're able to get away with, like, you don't have to do the color work. You don't have to do stranded color work,
Yes.
but then still
You get
get color
perfect
work out of
striping,
that
you
is really
know?
cool.
I've never done
Ooh,
it,
yeah.
there was this, so there's a women's group that meets up at the same cafe that we meet up at, and, one of the women there, she brought a
Mhm.
project one time that was all white, and she was saying that she was teaching a class on that, how you can, like, just make, like, a tapestry or something with a bunch of different stitch types, and then you go in later with the dye, and you say, like, "Okay, well, all of the half double crochets, I'm gonna paint this color, and well, obviously with like yarn dyes, is that's like what you're painting with.
Right.
But it's
Right.
like I'm guessing it's kind of like a paint by numbers, but like for your actual yarn. So then you're really making the colorway after you've already made the piece, which I think is pretty interesting.
That is really interesting. God, it would upset me so much if I was doing that and I accidentally got dye on one of the wrong parts and be like, I can't get that out. So
Yes.
I'm almost like, okay, no, I'm too afraid. I can't do that. I cannot do that, especially
Yeah.
if they were like the stitches were really close, like if it was cables and like I'm trying to get the background like right under a cable or something. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
I would
I
freak
know,
out. I'd be
right?
like, I would have rather just done the stranded color work.
For real.
All right. Well, it sounds like we have exhausted the color talk here. If you're a dyer, you'll understand why that's a funny joke. Because like
Yeah,
we've
yeah.
talked about, favorite colors, what draws us to them, and everything like that. And of course, as per the usual, we want to know what you think. What are your favorite colors?
Yes,
Do you
yes.
like tonal yarns, solid yarns, variegated? It's like what kinds of projects you like to do with those? Definitely, let us know in the comments. Keep the conversation going. We would love to hear everything you have to say about your favorite colors in fiber arts.
Yes, definitely. I love seeing comments on here. I love building a community with all of you. So we really appreciate the comments. We also really appreciate any kind of engagement on this video. So if you liked our video, definitely give us a like, give us a subscribe or a follow, and we would be very appreciative of that. We want to keep making these episodes for y'all, and it's really fun for us to see the community engagement. So thank you all for all of that support, and we really hope that you will come back for our next episode coming out in 2 weeks. And until then, take care.